We're going to have the honor of having Joe alongside of us, and we're going to be talking about the path to mental and financial freedom. And this series is really for anybody looking to take control over their mindset and over their money. So if you are tired of being stressed out, worried, losing sleep about your finances, or feeling fear around finances and wealth due to just future decisions and the things that we kind of have going on right now, this is a show that you definitely need to tune into, because we're going to be talking about strategies to help you get on the right track. Today's topic is going to be on thought patterns that are keeping you and your money stuck. So each time that you're listening to us for the next 4 series, we want to make sure that we are giving people practical solutions and takeaways on how to get out of this rut from a mental standpoint, okay? And so what I want to do is start off with a quick fun fact. The brain is a muscle. So if you've listened to this show before, you've heard me say this over and over and over again. And for today's topic, we're going to be talking about thought patterns keeping people stuck. So we got to start with the brain. We have to start with our mindset. And the truth is that we have between 50,000 and 70,000 thoughts per day. 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts per day. That's a lot of thinking. So when you think about that, and the reality is the majority of our thoughts are thoughts that we had yesterday. And so they're either negative in nature, dwelling on something that happened in the past, or fearing or worrying about something that can happen in the future. So when we think about that as it relates to money, you got to begin to ask yourself, are your thoughts holding you back? Are they keeping you stagnant? Or are they pushing you forward? So we really want to get this thought into your head. What are your thoughts doing for you? Are they helping you, keeping you still, or are they motivating you to do and take action? So think about that as it relates to your money and finances. Joe, let's go ahead and get into this conversation. As we're talking about thought patterns that are keeping people stuck, why do you think it's so difficult when we start talking about money? What is that for people? Why is it difficult for people to have a conversation about money and finances?
That's the $1 million question. It's funny, people have an easier time talking about maybe health issues that they're having, marriage problems that they're having, these problems with their children. But when it comes down to money, it's kind of this hidden, I can't reveal too much. My experience in dealing with a lot of different people about this is there's some stereotypes that kind of work out sometimes.
Right.
Men typically rank themselves based on how much money they have. So it's almost this like scorecard or tracking sheet. Like if I make a certain amount, I make more than you, then it's a competitive thing. Maybe, I don't know where it comes from, human nature. Women naturally tend to crave stability, as they're the ones that are bearing children. They're the ones that are, have that natural motherly instinct to create a home, to create safety around a home. And when the money situation is not stable, they don't want to talk about it, right? So there's some stereotypes that play out, but also I think that it reveals self-conscious issues that we all have. Because our perceptions are wrong. This country makes us think that money is your label. We have to walk around with the money we make. And if we don't make enough, if we don't save enough, if we made mistakes with it, that's not what we see on Instagram and Facebook and TV and the news. Everybody looks good. They're on vacation. They just bought a new car. And I'm still paying the same credit card from like 10 years ago. Well,
Right.
I must be something wrong with me.
Right.
So we just tend not to talk about it. And the problem is when we don't talk about it, we don't uncover the real problems that we're having. We don't seek help, and we continue to perpetuate that cycle and make bad decisions over time to try to appear that we don't have problems with money, we don't have concerns with it, and we all do. And I could tell you it runs the gamut between multimillionaires and people who are underwater in credit card debt. Everybody has the same fears in talking about money. So I think it's a complex thing. I think it's a personal thing. There's some family history that always comes into play. it's one of those things that's challenging to at least start to talk about, but I would encourage people to at least start to talk about it, at least start to open up about it a little bit to somebody that you trust.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of parallels when we think about money and mindset. And as you were just kind of talking about the perceptions of what we're seeing, whether that's what you're wearing, what you're driving, what job you have, how much your income is. And a lot of that is also tied into when we look at the mental health side of things. The people associate money with happiness.
Yes.
And that's where that can really become very dangerous because you're just exactly right. People start to ask themselves, so what is wrong with me?
Right.
Why am I not successful? And they could be doing what they love to do, a passion job that doesn't make as much money.
That's right.
But it's all connected, money and mindset.
It is.
And the mental health of all things. So I think it's good. And I think as we kind of get into today's show, we're going to talk a lot about starting with the thought patterns because that starts in the mind. And when we think about thought patterns or whatever the perceptions are, whatever the beliefs are that you have around yourself or the beliefs that you have around money and what wealth looks like, a belief is a thought that we just continue to think. And so I got to say that one more time. A belief is just a thought that we continue to think. And so when you think about beliefs that you have, they begin to shape the outcome of your life. So how many people are walking around with beliefs or perceptions about money, about wealth, about themselves, their own insecurities, right? How many people are walking around with this belief system that has not been helpful for them? And so I'm pretty sure in your world, you are doing a lot of work with just as you're looking at finances and looking at goals and looking at where people are, we have to start to first tap into what is the thought process? What are your beliefs behind where you are?
Right. Yeah. And it's funny. So many of the instances where I first meet somebody and I start asking questions like, tell me about your experience with money. Tell me about, what do you like about it? What do you not like? What are your fears, concerns? When I start to get into more of the personal, psychological aspect of it, it's almost guaranteed that almost immediately people go to, well, my parents, and then they get carrying on. So my dad was a hoarder. Okay, he was a miser. He never spent a dime. I never got anything new for my birthday. It was always secondhand. So we were told that we couldn't spend any money. Or my mom was a spender, and she, used retail therapy as a way to feel good about things. Or my parents never could hold jobs, and they're on unemployment their whole life. So it's like people are telling me, hey, because I grew up like this, I am now conditioned to have to fight against this. There's something that's not quite right about it. I know that, but yet I find myself falling into that line. They wouldn't tell me it if it wasn't a problem,
right,
if it wasn't an anchor in their life. And so when you ask the question, how many of us are walking around with beliefs that maybe hinder us, I'd say 100% of us. I'd say 100% of us guaranteed have developed something along the way. Because nobody's 100% confident in everything they do. Nobody's 100% confident in everything they know. We all carry around personal experiences. The key is, as you were kind of getting to, was starting to identify those beliefs and where they come from. And so a lot of times there's family lineage. A lot of times there's experience, just personal experience where you've made a decision about money. And I always go on record as saying, hey, you want to know the bad decisions I made about money? I'm an open book. My cards will be on the table for you. And I do that in a way to show that I have empathy for people because we all do it. So I've made mistakes that have cost me not only money, but conflict in relationships. They've cost me confidence in myself and what I can do. And I've had to carry that and fight through that. So starting to just be okay with recognizing what are those bad beliefs that hinder you and where did they start coming from? That's, I think, the first step, and I think that's kind of where you were starting to head.
Absolutely, because we're looking at, and I was able to kind of look at some of that research, and it was talking about exactly what you're saying there. Most people have non-supportive, fear-based beliefs around money and wealth. around success, what that looks like, what that feels like. And a lot of this was developed by modeling influences, whether it's the parents, whether it's the teachers, whether it's the media, whether it's the expectations of your friends, of those things. And so you're exactly right. First, becoming aware, number one, become aware of your non-supportive and fear-based beliefs around money, wealth, and success, and changing them over into something that supports you, that actually feels good to you, that aligns with where you are now and where you're going. And so being able to kind of step outside of what number one, assessing where did it come from? Where did that belief start? So I think tip number one is just helping people understand, where did these beliefs come from? These non-supportive, fear-based beliefs around whatever that is, for your money, for your finances, for your future goals, for your mental health. Where did this belief start? Is it helping you? Is it keeping you stuck? Or is it putting fuel in the fire and moving you forward? As we're talking about thought patterns that are keeping people stuck, and as we're talking about belief systems that are already in place, we want to also begin to talk about, how do we begin to change that over to supportive beliefs, to action-based beliefs, and getting you out of that driver's seat, getting you unstuck, and getting you on that path to mental and financial freedom. So what we were just saying, Joe, let's get back into this. When we're talking about becoming more aware of what those non-supportive beliefs are, and really unlocking that fear behind it, I think it's important, as you and I were both saying, is that we got to first acknowledge that a belief is just something that we continue to think, right or wrong. So a belief is just a thought that you continue to think. The beautiful thing about it is we can change it. There is something that we can do about that. So if you can change whatever this thing is that's keeping you stuck and create a new narrative, this can put you in the right mental space to really be successful. And so let's begin that conversation. And we also had a really good question come in that was asked: what do you think is the best mindset to have around money? And so we're going to answer that question as we kind of go through this topic here. But we also want to encourage you guys, if you're listening, whether it's via Facebook Live, if you're on the podcast kind of listening, we're going to encourage you guys to ask us questions as it becomes, or share with us some of those thought patterns that you currently have around money, that you currently have, as we kind of get into some examples here. Let's go ahead and get some examples going about what are some thought patterns that people could be having right now that are maybe not so helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
And one of the first ones that I'm thinking about, Joe, if people believe that money is a limited resource, and is only available to a certain group of people. So that could be a thought pattern. Let's assess this really quickly here. A thought pattern that people can have right now is just, money is just a limited resource and only a certain amount of people can get that. That's only for people who've been born into wealth. You got to have a certain job to make this amount of money. So I'm really not in line to be successful here. Tell us about that type of thought pattern. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that can come from so many different places. That can come from your belief on what your certain demographic, quote unquote, deserves, based on what your family taught you. That could be based on your race. That could be based on your religion. That could be based on what country you came from before you came here. Your family history. If you feel like you fall into the camp of, hey, we're always going to be just blue collar workers, just barely getting ahead, just that's our life, that could come from a lot of different places. And so it's important to identify, are those beliefs boxing you in? Because here's the reality. I've met a lot of people with a lot of money, and I've not met ones that are, there's some luck and timing, of course, right? But they failed many, many, many more times than they succeeded. And the difference is often, it sounds cliche, but the difference is often that they had this belief that they could just keep going. And that though they failed, though there was a wall, though they heard the word no a million times, it was ingrained in them that I'm just going to keep going. And they're always one more shovel scoop away from finding that gold nugget. They just believe that. It's not this kind of feel-good, happy message. It's just, I really believe I'm always one more scoop away from finding that gold nugget.
And I want to piggyback on that. So as you just said that, they believed that, and there was an underlying belief that there was an abundance of money available to everyone, right? And so in
Yes.
taking that ability of saying, you know what, this money is only available to a certain group and for a certain demographic or a certain job can require.
Yeah.
But there was an underlying piece of that belief that believed that there's an abundance out here available for everyone, and I'm going to find it.
There is.
I'm going to tap into it.
Yeah, opportunity. We're in the land of opportunity.
Yeah.
This is a place where ideas thrive, new ideas thrive, and you have to have the belief that. And I would say this: if you have a belief system that causes you to get depressed, discouraged, to kind of slunch your shoulders, to sort of sweep things under the rug and just say, well, I'm just going to go to work, get a paycheck, and just try to survive. Those are not positive beliefs. Yeah. If you have a belief or a mindset that causes you to get fired up, where all of a sudden it's 2 a.m. and you know you should be sleeping, but you're excited about something, there's something there that you tapped into. If you have a belief system that has caused you to want to share with other people your excitement, your confidence, there's something there that you're tapped into. So recognize, how your body, how your mind reacts to certain belief systems. If I get a credit card bill and I just want to sweep it under the rug and just say, I'm never going to get ahead. And I've had people say this, I just can't get ahead. I'll never get ahead. I'm always going to be broke. That's not putting a future out there for yourself that's positive. You're saying, this is as good as you can do. You've peaked.
Mm-hmm.
What else is there after this?
Yeah.
It's only going downhill.
Yeah. And I think, as you just said that, I can't get ahead. I'll never get ahead. I can't control if I become wealthy or not. Those types of limiting beliefs or fear-based beliefs, we want to encourage you to, number one, write down what your beliefs are. So if any of those just resonated with you, or you may have your own belief systems around money, first thing to do is write those out. What are the non-supportive or fear-based beliefs that I have around my money? I can't get ahead. I won't get ahead. Wealth does not, I've never seen it in my family, so it can't happen to me. We got to switch those over to beliefs that are going to support you. Okay. So write down the non-supportive fear-based beliefs. That's the first thing you do. Then we're going to create a script that's going to support you. So instead of saying that I can't get ahead, I won't get ahead, I can't become wealthy, begin to write on that script, I create the life that I desire. I take consistent actions to create the things that I want in my life. Just write that out to the other side of that. Those are the types of mindsets and things that you have to change that non-supportive, fear-based thought pattern into something that's going to support you. So if it's I can't control it, I don't have control, it goes to I can create the life that I desire. I do have control. I'm taking consistent actions to be better every single day with my money. If it was something about money is a limited resource, that's only for a certain amount of people, change that over to there is an abundance amount of money out here for all of us. There's resources and opportunities out here for all of us. So you want to change the script. Okay. First step is to identify those patterns and those thought systems that are keeping you stuck. So write those out. Be honest with yourself. If you want to send those to us, make sure you just kind of put that in the news feed there. We'll tell you how to get in contact with us as well. You can send us those thoughts there. We want to help you switch those over, create a new script to something that's going to support you. And tip number 3 is to take action and repeat that. So after you identify what those negative thoughts are that are holding you back, after you rewrite the scripts for things that are more supportive to you, then you're going to go on a daily practice of repeating it. Remember, your brain is a muscle, so it doesn't do you any justice just to write it down and let it sit. You got to get into practice with this. You got to start saying these things over and over again. I have an abundance amount of resources available to me. I create the life that I desire. I do the things that I love to do. So in the doing of those things, the flow of wealth and money and opportunities comes in my direction. So you got to begin to speak those things daily so that the brain begins to connect in a different way. Okay? Mm-hmm. Joe, anything else you want to add to that? We have about 2 minutes left. I want to make sure that they know how to contact us because we're going to be on this show each week talking about these things.
Yeah, I would say, what I would add to that is Tracy gave those 3 points out. Don't just write down your beliefs. Write down your family's beliefs.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to write some things down to look at them to see how false they are so you can decide, I'm going to get out of agreement with that. And, the last point that she made was actually taking action on things. So, I spend a lot of time reading in the Bible, and the Bible says faith without works is dead. That's true in all aspects of life. You could believe something, but if you don't do anything about it, you truly don't believe it. So if you believe that there's an abundance of money, you have opportunity out there, you can be better than what your situation dictates, go for it. Make some steps.
Go for it. You guys go to TracyAlston.com. There's a way for us to contact us there. Send us any of your thoughts and messages over. You have been listening to the Mental Fitness Matters show. Thought patterns keeping you stuck. Take action today. We look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We really are trying to create a platform for people to get control over their money and their wealth. Getting control over your money and your wealth. So we're going to get right into part 2 today, okay? And that's going to be getting back in control. We're going to provide you guys with practical ways to form healthier mental and monetary behavioral patterns. Joe, let's talk about this, because I think as we are doing this series, it's really important for our listeners to understand the connection between our money and our mental health. There is a correlation there, mental health and money. It all goes hand in hand. Money doesn't equal happiness, but it can have a huge impact on different areas of our life. And one of those things really being our mental health, relationships, social ability. So let's kind of get into this. As we talk about getting back in control for part 2, let's first kind of start with some of those pain points that we might can see the impact that money can have on our mental and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. The statistics are out there that show that people who have money problems are more likely to have marital problems. And now you could say maybe correlation doesn't mean causation, meaning the money doesn't cause the divorce, the money problem doesn't cause the divorce, but gosh, it's certainly a weight.
Oh my gosh.
And I've experienced that in my own life, and I know a lot of my clients have as well. So you just look at marriage alone or relationships alone. Maybe it's the relationships you have with your children who are grown, and you don't like the way that they take care of their money or not take care of their money, and you would have them do something different. It causes conflict in a relationship, and it adds a layer of stress and anxiety that is not normally there.
Yeah, and then when we talk about stress and anxiety, when we talk about the financial stress, can really begin to it can have negative impact on cash flow, which when we talk about some of those things, 75% of U.S. adults live in a so-called stress brain state, which is a situation where they feel stressed out all the time. So if people are coming home with high levels of stress and you're in the midst of family and relationships, everything can kind of suffer when you're looking at it like that. And as we're talking about really identifying ways to get back in control, we want people to understand that any area of your life, when you feel like things are out of control, whether that's in your financials, whether that's in your physical health, whether that's in your mental health, whether that's in your social life, any area of our lives that get out of control, it's important to be able to kind of start to have these conversations, because a lot of times what we tend to do is ignore or act like the problems don't exist.
Yes, they're other people's problems. They're not ours.
They're other people's problems, right? Yeah. We turn a blind eye.
That's right.
Sweep it
under the rug.
Yeah, a lot of these things building up can cause some of the other things that are popping up for people.
Absolutely. There's I guess can I share a story?
Yeah, please do.
So this is a personal story. I like to throw my cards on the table, so I'm a terrible poker player because I do that. But just to show you the impact of money in a relationship, in a good relationship. So in my marriage, it was some years ago that I'd done some real estate deals and things like that over the years. And so it was a handful of years ago, and I wanted to do another one. And I found a deal, and I told my wife, okay, I came home, I said, hey, found a good deal, and we're going to do this real estate deal. And she's like, okay. She says, you could do it, but don't spend any of our savings, and I don't want you taking out additional lines of credit to do the deal. You can finance it through the bank and do whatever you're doing. I said, okay, and guess what I did? Yeah, I'm that guy. So I did it. I did all those things, and in my mind, I'm thinking, you know what? She'll thank me later. This is going to work out. I'm the money guy. I know what I'm doing. It's worked before, and I'll just show up and buy her something really nice, and she'll be like, wow, you're so smart. Do whatever you want with our money. And it definitely didn't go that route. So the deal didn't go as I wanted it to, and I got left with some debt that I committed to. And I thought, well, I'll kick it down the road and I'll leverage it and do something else. And so here, years later, it's like I still have this debt. And I'm like, well, where's this from? And she's like, well, I could tell you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I say all that, it's kind of joking now because it's way past us. But at the time, and for actually a number of years, the decision I made with money to not include her and to kind of do it my way despite what she wanted, I didn't compromise in that. I just went and did it. That caused a lot of stress and damage to trust in the relationship. Now we have a phenomenal marriage, and we've had our ups and downs like any marriage, but that was a point of contention where trust was damaged. And so the decision around money, one decision cost me lots of time. And everybody knows when you destroy trust in a relationship, most people think it's just through infidelity. That's the only way to do it. No, it's through lying. It's through doing something with money and not telling your spouse about it, or whatever the case is. That has a lasting effect. That now you got to work over time to get that back. And so, it absolutely does correlate to you making decisions together, recognizing that money can either be something that unites you two, where you become partners, or it could be a wedge in your relationship. And you might not know what it is until years later, and you look and say, oh, shoot, now I'm trying to repair something.
Right.
So, and I've know a lot of people that have had similar experiences. So I share that to say, don't downplay the weight that your decisions around money have in the relationships with those that are closest to you.
Absolutely. And I'm hearing you kind of talk that through, and not only that piece of it, and not downplaying the value of being able to kind of open up and communicate about what the needs are, what the plans are, and having that open line of communication with the people, your partner, your spouse, so that way everybody's on the same page.
That's right.
Because as you just described, a level of trust was broken, which is going to cause additional problems in the mental health space.
Absolutely.
So that's powerful.
Big time. Big time stress that's added that, quite frankly, you don't need to add.
Yeah.
Relationships are tough enough, Tracy. I mean, you know that. Gosh, every relationship, whether it's with your parents, your kids, your cousins, doesn't matter, your boss, your spouse, they're tough enough with all the outside influences in this world. Then you do something that you think is, it's just money. Like, money is just, it's over there. It's not an emotional thing. It's just a dollar bill and a coin and a credit card and whatever. And you don't realize that, no, that thing is a wedge if you allow it to be in many areas of your life. And sometimes it's a wedge with yourself, which is probably that's more on your level. That's too deep for me to go. But you know what I mean? Sometimes it can cause you to look at yourself and say, gosh, what the heck is wrong with me?
Absolutely. Because kind of like when we talked about, as these shows are going to kind of blend together here, when we talked about in topic 1, thought patterns and beliefs around money, and how people attach money to value of themselves or not, right? So I think those things are big. And when you're talking about money and relationships, the self-esteem piece of that, how are you coming to the table, and what does that mean to you? Mm-hmm. What does that value hold to you? And so I think as we're talking about money and relationships in this sense, being able to rely on your partner, right? Yes. Being able to be in a good mental space and feeling as though the partner in your relationship can make good decisions.
Yes.
And so when we're talking about the mental health piece of that as well, it's like, okay, when we make these decisions around our money, what space are we in? How do we feel? Are we making decisions? Do we notice we make decisions when we are not feeling so good? Are those the poor decision making? Are we feeling at our best in making decisions that don't turn out so well with our money?
That's right. And are we making decisions that are we would feel comfortable sharing publicly?
Right.
Boy, that's a big one right there.
Yeah.
If you told somebody what you did with your money, would you be afraid how they would respond, or would you be proud to tell them what you did?
Yeah. That's powerful, and so when you think about that, as you stop and think about all of these things, it reminds you to go back and pause. Mm-hmm. And so as we said at the beginning of the show, when we're talking about getting back in control in any area of our life, I think the very first thing that we have to do is we're talking about if things are out of control, no matter what the area is, we got to sit down and take a look at it.
Yes.
We got to sit down and take a look at it and figure out, where did this train go off the track? And how do I use my relationships, my partnerships, professionals, if you need to bring in professional supports?
Yep.
How do we get the train back on the track and reassess where we are?
Absolutely.
Having the conversations.
Yes.
Because money is something that we definitely need, right? It really is access to anything that we're doing, eating, shopping, going, living. How do we not allow money to be controlling our behaviors and our decisions? How do we get in control of something that really has a lot of power in everything that we do?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is we got to recognize that we actually give money control. We allow it to control us. We allow ourselves to slide into the perceptions that we think, we need to live at a certain standard. We need to look a certain way. We need to drive a certain something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you're not living this life, whatever that life is, I don't know. It's what people put on social media. Then you're not getting it. It's get money, hustle, get what? Why?
Yeah.
What are you talking about right
Yeah.
now? So it's like, take control back. How do you take control of something? You decide to be proactive on it. So you want to lose 50 pounds. How do you take control of your own body? You don't just decide in your mind, I'm going to lose 50 pounds. You decide that your refrigerator is going to look different starting today. You decide that treadmill's got dust on it. You're going to knock the dust off and get on it, right? You decide to take proactive steps. So there's some things that you got to do. Nobody wants to do them. But if you want to change the results, you got to do something different.
Absolutely. And so as I'm hearing you say that, as it relates to the topic we're on today, you can't control right now the amount of money coming in and out of your home. So you may have a job that's providing
right.
you a certain monthly amount. So that is what it is. But there's some things that we can do that may not necessarily be directly based on the amount of money coming in, but they're tied to your mental health, to your spending habits. And one of the things from a mental health perspective, I think people really can just start to take a look at of what we can control is, number one, our sleep. Our sleep. I don't think people realize the value of what sleep does in terms of how you feel the next day, how you power up. Sleep is a very restorative process. So really just kind of setting a game plan up to say, you know what? If we're going to do this together, if you have a partner that's with you in the home, being able to say, let's create a consistent sleep schedule. Let's start there. Let's take the money off the table. Let's get some habits that we can control through sleep, nutrition, and exercise, and say, let's create a game plan around that to see if I begin to feel better, which allows us both to be happier,
Right.
which then allows us to kind of have more mental energy to make better decisions.
Right.
So there's some things that we can do.
Absolutely. And that's a simple thing, right? I'm a big proponent of afternoon naps. I don't get any of them, but I wish everybody would take one. But sleep. We think, there's no rest. You got to work to burn the midnight oil. If you're not up till 2 a.m. working and up at 5 a.m. back at it, then you're not going to be successful. I think that's a myth.
Yeah.
I think some people are built, they can operate on really low sleep, but it will catch up with you. And your brain, you know more about this obviously than me, but your brain is way more clear. There's more clarity, there's more focus, there's more creativity that comes in a rested mind.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and it reduces stress. And so when we think about stress around finances, if you can't control, for right now, the amount of money coming in and out, don't try so hard to try to change that. Go to the areas that are least resistant, where you have less stress around. Money is the money piece there. But yeah, don't try to let that be the thing that you're trying to change when you know right now income is what it is. So you go to something that's least resistant and say, you know what, can't move this needle, but how do I start feeling better? How can I, not like you just said, Joe, knock the dust off the treadmill and start just working on my physical health, allowing myself to feel better about myself, which is going to also help you attract other things that can lead to more money into your life.
And making better decisions.
Making better decisions. So taking the focus off of this big pain point of the money, let's switch gears a little bit. Begin to work on something that you can control. But you may have an opportunity to change the income, which can help people set up some strategies at home with their spouse and setting a budget or some sort.
But if you're not rested enough, you're not going to have the creativity to recognize opportunity or the energy to take on an additional opportunity.
Absolutely.
So that's great advice is take the first step. That's the path of least resistance, things that you can change to at least start down that path.
Yeah, and because I think a lot of times, no matter what the goals are that we're setting for ourselves, we try to start with the thing that we feel like this is the issue, so I have to start there. But a lot of times that creates this negative effect where it makes you stop and you do nothing. So let's just take a step back. Let's just start with the things and the basics, going back to what does my health look like? Because my physical health, my mental health, my financial health, they all go in this pattern.
Yes.
And if one or two are out of whack, you can also expect the next one to be following that same
Domino
path.
effect,
Domino
absolutely.
effect. So really, if you're alone in this situation, meaning you don't have a spouse or a family and it's just you, that's no problem either. Look at yourself and figure out some of the wellness goals that you can start with and say, you know what? How can I change some patterns in my eating? How can I change some patterns in my sleep? How can I change some patterns in the things that I'm doing socially to see if that helps me feel better? And then begin to see, as if you're feeling better, do you notice changes in your spending? Are you making better food choices? A lot of times when we're out and being active and exercising, we automatically begin to make better decisions in terms of what we're eating. Then we also make better decisions on terms of what we're spending on.
Yes.
So it connects.
It does. It does. And that leads to a tip that I would throw out is a practical way to start to get a control of your money is the word that you all are hoping that I don't say is budget. You need a budget. Everybody needs a budget. Budget's like this scary word. People think, well, if I have a budget, now I don't have control of my money. My budget's telling me. A budget is this. It's you telling your money where to go instead of your money telling you where it went.
Whew.
Tell your money where to go every month. And it's really this simple. By the way, if you don't know how to budget, if you're curious as to what that looks like, you need resources, email me, joed@parksidewealth.com. I have a lot of different resources I could send you. I could find something that's going to work best for you. But budgeting is this simple. At the beginning of the month, write down what you expect to spend in every category, all of your expenses, your mortgage, your car payment, your shopping, your food, all your variable expenses, and make that the target. At the end of the month, look backwards and say, what did we actually spend? And compare those numbers. And, okay, we thought we were going to spend $300 on going out to eat, and we spent $450. Well, you lost $150 somewhere. Man, it happens. Believe me, it happens. But if you're not budgeting, you don't even know it. And you get to the end of the year, you get 10 years down the line, you're like, why do I still have debt? Why am I not even close to retirement?
Yeah.
Because you're not preparing a budget. So start there. Does it take some work? Yes. You have to save some receipts? Yes. Suck it up.
Yeah.
You gotta do it.
You gotta do it.
You gotta do it, right?
But
you have to do it. And I will tell you this, the first 3-4 months, you're gonna be frustrated and you're gonna be wrong. Your budget's going to be way out of whack. You're going to think you're spending this and you're actually spending that. Just keep going through the process. I promise you, after 3-4 months, maybe 6 even for some people, you're going to get on track. You're going to feel better. You're going to feel more peace. You're going to know what you have going on. You have to start there and tell your money where to go.
I love that. And I love how you're kind of starting it out with a 30-day plan. Just taking a look. Create a plan.
Take a look.
So budgeting your money, budgeting your time, budgeting your physical fitness, budgeting your sleep. So when we think about this term budget, it's really just kind of creating that game plan of what am I able to spend? What do I have? And so if you give yourself 30 days, and as you guys are seeing, we're going through a 4-part series. So we'll be with you guys every week, until about July 9th. So we can kind of use this game plan moving forward and just start. Just start. You don't have to have it all figured out, but just start a game plan of I'm going to make some adjustments. I'm going to assess where I am and where I want to be, and I'm going to start somewhere. And whether that's just starting with creating that budget, looking at 30 days, then also creating a sleep schedule where you're going to say to yourself, I'm going to try to get in bed by 10 o'clock. I'm going to try my best to get in bed by 10 o'clock and waking up at a certain time. Giving yourself permission to start to create some boundaries and consistency in your life and begin to see if you notice how you feel. Does that make a difference in how you feel? And does that feeling correlate into how you spend and also what you're keeping and earning, right?
Yes. And do this with your spouse.
Yeah.
If you're married, do this with your spouse. Oh, my spouse doesn't worry about money. She doesn't want to bother with the money. Make her bother with the money. You have to. I tell you what, You don't think your spouse cares about money? Go spend your money on something selfish and expensive and show up at home with it. And you'll know real quick your spouse does care about the money.
Yeah.
So do this stuff together. It creates a unifying effect. You're in business together, and you can be accountable to each other, to the budget, and run your home like you run a business. And you'll have a lot more success and a lot more peace, which I think is ultimately what people are looking for, is peace.
Absolutely. Guys, you have just tuned in to part 2, Getting Back in Control, practical ways for your mental and monetary health. Tune in next week for part 3. We're going to be talking about building mental and financial wealth, setting the right goals and creating the right plans. So we're going to get a little bit more specific on how you can kind of create these goals, guys. Go out and shine bright like the stars that you are. Joe, great to see you. I'll see you next week, my friend.
Been fun. See you next week.
Awesome. Now we want to get you guys in the driver's seat to build and create mental and financial success. So I want you, if you are in a position that you could actually have a notepad out, take some notes, that's awesome. If not, you can go back and check this show out if you're listening by driving. So I want you to be safe. But you want to take notes during this show because we are going to provide you guys with some practical solutions on what to do for your financial and mental success. Think about your life, if you could, over the next 10 years. Do you want to have better relationships? Do you want to have better finances? Do you want to have better control over your future while maintaining a positive mindset and attitude? I'm pretty sure everybody would answer yes to that question, right?
Of course.
I think everybody could say right now, if your life could be better, what do I need to do to get there? So what we're going to do is teach you how to start right now with what you have, create a plan for mental and financial success. And it starts with creating the right goals and SMART goals. Joe, let's go ahead and get into today's show. Like, where do people need to begin? So if we're thinking about building a path to success financially, mentally, where do people even need to start? What do we do? How do we start this?
So, you mentioned SMART goals. Goal setting has to be the key. I mean, nobody gets in their car and doesn't know where they're headed. Right? Nobody gets up, their alarm clock goes off, and they don't know what they're doing for the day. We all have to have a plan for the day. Well, some people maybe. That's crazy. So setting.
But that's the reality, too. Some people wake up and just wake up. Really, maybe you've had no thought behind, what am I going to do today? Let's think about it in the terms, too, of this quarantine. Mm-hmm. If we're in a position where it's like our whole lives have kind of been upside down, maybe you're not going into a job. Mm-hmm. So let's start with that piece of it. SMART goals and creating a plan has to be the place that we start.
Has to be the place. And so, talking about SMART goals, SMART is an acronym. You could look it up online if you don't have a chance to write it down. But SMART goals stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. It sounds like a lot, but I'll give you an example of a goal that is not SMART and a goal that is SMART.
Perfect.
So let's just pertain it to, let's just say losing weight. A lot of people want to lose some pounds, so that's an easy one to go off of. A not SMART goal would be, I want to lose weight. There's no specificity to that. There's no actionable item to that. There's no time. I just want to lose weight. Okay, well, you can't do anything with that. How do you change? A SMART goal in losing weight would be, I want to lose 20 pounds this year. Okay, so I'm going to lose 20 pounds this year by working out 3 days a week, walking a mile a day on days I don't work out, and cutting my calorie intake by 50 calories a day. And I'm going to do that every day, right? So it's specific. It's realistic. You can lose 20 pounds in a year. Is that what I said, 20?
Yeah.
It's attainable, right? It's not like, hey, I want to become, I need to lose 100 pounds. I want to become a professional bodybuilder by the end of the year, right? It's realistic, and it's time-bound. By the end of the year, I'm going to have lost 20 pounds. Right? Or, a pound a month or 2 pounds a month or whatever the goal is. So that has to be where you are in your relationships and in your finances. Start to create goals to say, hey, I want to have this much in savings by saving this much a week out of my paycheck, or cutting back this much a week on expenses. And you could, share some examples and how would you create a SMART goal as it relates to things like, emotional well-being, mental health, relationships, and things like that. But being specific is the key.
Specific is the key. And I like the example that you just used because, like you started it off with, I want to lose weight. Mm-hmm. Sounds awesome.
Right.
I want to save money. I want to feel better.
Right.
I want to ...
Mm-hmm.
That's great. But if we have no way to measure what it is that we're doing, that's all it is. It's a great goal. It sounds awesome,
Right.
but how are we getting there?
Right.
And so this SMART acronym, I love that because it's creating a path and a plan for success.
Mm-hmm.
I want to lose 20 pounds. That's specific.
Yep.
You measured that by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we're looking at the mental health side of things, if we haven't, like last show, we talked about some of those things that we can put in place, like improving your sleep.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get better sleep quality,
Right.
so really kind of having specific goals in terms of what that looks like. But I love having this idea of we got to have something that's realistic, that we can measure, that we can monitor, that we actually can call back and track.
That's right.
Does it matter when we talk about some of these goals, when it's short-term, middle-term goals, or long-term goals in terms of this SMART acronym?
Yeah, the SMART acronym applies to all of it. So, a long-term goal, and I'll just speak in terms of finances. You can keep this real simple too. We can get more technical, but let's just say a long-term goal is anything over a year. You might want to say 12 months out and beyond. That's more of a longer-term goal, or maybe you do short-term goals as 12 months or less. A long-term goal or a medium-term goal is 1 year to 5 years, and long-term goals are 5 years out, right? So let's just take a short-term goal. And maybe you could even boil it down to the next 30 days as a short-term goal. You still want to have the SMART acronym kind of driving that goal. In 30 days, I want to save $100. Well, how am I going to do that? I'm not going to make an extra $100 at my job. Can I go do some side work? Can I not buy coffee twice this week? Where can I cut back, right? And how can I do that? So you have to have whatever the goal is. If it's long-term, short-term, medium-term, right now, we have to be specific about it. It has to be measurable. It has to be realistic and attainable. You have to have a timeline on it. Otherwise, procrastination kicks in and it gets swept under the rug and people get distracted. So it's a way to hold yourself accountable.
I like that.
Get action.
And for the people that may be listening now and they're thinking about, their money coming in and what if people kind of have this income that's pretty consistent every single month, and they may be thinking, what if I don't necessarily know that I have any extra money to start creating this place where I can create SMART goals? Let's talk a little bit about how do people begin to create a budget with limited funds? How much money do you need to really have to begin this process of creating success financially?
Right. Well, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. Now, if you're not making a lot of money, well, then you can't spend a lot of money. The first place it starts is in the mind. Yeah. You have to make up your mind that the cards that you have, look, some people make, multiple hundreds of thousands a year and they work a job that's highly paid or what have you. And some people are busting their butt, making a minimum wage and they're like, I just don't have any more hours in the week to knock this out. Okay, those are the cards you have in your hand right now. What's the best way to play that hand? If you can't make any more money, you have to try to spend less. You have to start to get creative. And there's a thing called sacrifice. Yeah. We don't want to do it in this country because we have all these little plastic things in our pocket that we could just whip out at any moment in time and say, I don't really feel like sacrificing. I want to have it now, and I'll pay it off down the line. I would encourage everybody, don't do that. And what you're doing when you whip out that credit card and you start to forego sacrifice, which sacrifice is a wonderful thing. We can get into that. But when you forego sacrifice and whip out that card for that immediate gratification or saying, you know what, everybody else has this, so I deserve it too. Really what you're doing, because nobody else cares about your situation but you, truly. Really what you're doing is you're betting on your future self. Think about that. I'm going to go spend $5,000 on this credit card to get the things that I want, my new clothes, my new shoes, my whatever, and I'm going to pay it off down the line. Well, you don't know what down the line looks like, right. And you've not made any SMART goals to put yourself in the category of knowing what down the line looks like. So you're literally just placing a bet on your future self 5-10 years down the line. Yeah. And interest works against you while you're placing that bet. So it's about being specific. It's about sacrifice and saying, if you don't have a lot of money coming in, start where you are, cut back where you can. And sometimes you just can't. There's no more. I get it. I talk to people all the time. They're like, well, listen, I got rid of cable. I got rid of this. We went down to one vehicle, and it's a beater, but it gets me to work, and that's all I have. I sold this on eBay. I sold this on Amazon. I don't know what else to do. And it's like, okay, great job. At least you're taking action. At least from there, you have a foundation to where you can now start to build and say, okay, I need to do something different. Is it a different degree I need to get? Do I need to save up to take some online classes to qualify me for a higher paying job?
Yeah.
Right? Is it a little side business that my wife can start while I'm out at work? You can get creative. If you're buried under debt and you don't know where you're going and you don't know where your money's going, you're not budgeting, you have no room to get creative because you're just living in stress and fear and anxiety, and you're week to week. So,
and I think, as you were kind of saying, it starts in the mind. It starts about really kind of some of the things that have led up to this show is really getting ourselves in a mindset and in a space, in a mental and healthy place to be able to do the things that we're asking people to start to do. It's really being able to create that plan, become creative. And the better you feel, the better you perform, and so there may not be wiggle room on that financial side. But if you are taking these action steps and trying to create a plan, and if you're working on your sleep, if you're trying to change things from an exercise health perspective, you're going to feel better and not find yourself in this impulsive spending in terms of this impulse buying, because we're taking care of our emotional health as well. It's all tied in. It goes hand in hand. So if I am making these impulse decisions to just go out and use my card, that may be more linked to what I'm feeling on the inside, right? And so as we start to do a deeper dive of this money and mindset piece of it, they're all interconnected. What are some steps? What do we do next? What's our 3-step process look like?
So, the first thing you have to do is you have to budget, okay? And if you don't know why, or you're kind of against that whole idea and you think you're going to lose control by budgeting, go listen to, I think it was the second show we talked about it. You need to listen to both anyway.
Yeah.
But you have to budget. So this is this advice and these steps I'm going to give you is under the assumption that you are budgeting. You are telling your money where to go instead of waiting for it to tell you where it went. All right? So that's the first thing. Okay, so the first step is once you're budgeting, you're making some cuts, you're making smart goals, you're figuring out where to scale back, where to find extra money. You may be working some extra hours, trying to pick up some extra funds. What do you do? Okay, so statistic here, 2/3 of people in this country cannot cover a $1,000 emergency. Okay, well, let's solve that problem right now. The first thing you should be doing is trying to get a $1,000 emergency fund set aside. I don't care if you got $1 million in debt. I don't care what the reason is. Find $1,000. Make that your goal. I'm saving $50 a month for the next 20 months, and I'll have a $1,000 fund. That has to be your goal, because here's the thing. If you don't do that, the car needs tires. The car needs an oil change. My wife cut herself in the kitchen, and we have a hospital bill for stitches coming up. My kid needs new baseball cleats.
Yep.
Something happens, and what happens? We pull out the credit card, and now 5 years later, you're still paying off the baseball cleats. So get that $1,000 account. Now, the only time in your life that $1,000 should not be there is if you're using it. I had to spend $400 on tires, so now it's down to $600. So your very immediate goal is let's get that back up to $1,000. Lower everything down. Don't pay off your debt so aggressive. Get that back to $1,000. That's your watermark, okay?
Yeah.
Do you want me to keep going?
I love that, and I want to talk to you really quick about that piece of it. So as people hear that $1,000 emergency fund, some people may be like, oh, I can't even get $100, right? And so I love how you're talking about get creative. There may be things that you can cut out. Right now, we're having to eat in more, so that may be a saved expense. Figuring out ways that you can find areas to save and commit to that.
That's right.
Commit to that. So make that commitment. I like that.
Commit and sacrifice. And look, it's not easy. No one's saying it's easy. I'm not saying reach in the couch cushions and you're going to find an extra grand sitting there. No one does that.
Right.
Well, maybe some people, not me. But you got to make some cuts and sacrifices, and it's not forever. But get yourself in a position where ultimately you can say, gosh, the car needs tires. We have a grand sitting there. That's what it's for. Beautiful. Write a check. Debit card. Done. Now I spend time trying to build that back up.
Yep.
The whole thing is going to give you more peace and more clarity, and you're going to have to reach in your pocket for that credit card less and less over time. So that's number one.
Love it.
Okay. Number two, 78% of people in this country, that's a lot. That's 8 out of 10 people are living paycheck to paycheck. And we say that check to check. What does that really mean? That means if I miss a check, if a check is short, if the payroll company made a mistake and the check is a week late, what are you doing? I'm reaching in my pocket for the credit card and I'm betting on myself again in the future and I'm messed up, right? Or I lost a job. I mean, so many people are dealing with that right now. So we're going to solve that problem. Get yourself 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Okay, so once you get the $1,000, your next immediate goal should be, how do I save up 3 months of living expenses? And not living expenses like I'm living high on the hog, but living expenses like I don't have a job, we need to eat the bare minimum food, we're cutting out every electronic in the house, and we're just keeping the lights on and the AC on, okay?
Yep.
That's your next goal. Solve that problem. Don't be one of the 8 out of 10 people, which is the majority of Americans, that don't have that.
And I like that because everything that you're talking about in terms of the $1,000 emergency fund, 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses, this all requires an intentionality. And so
Big
as we
time.
go back to this money and mindset, the mental piece that goes with this, guys, you have to be intentional. So if you are waking up without a plan in any area of your life, if you just roll out of bed to roll out of bed with no goals or directions, this has to become really important, not only for your financial health, but recognizing, being intentional, saying, you know what, I'm working on a goal of creating financial success or
Right.
creating a mental health success. You have to start somewhere, and that's by being intentional.
It is.
So no matter how difficult or challenging these things may sound, once you create some intention behind it, you're going to recognize that you have a lot more wiggle room than you knew.
Absolutely. So the other thing is, and I kind of went out of order, so let me start over. First thing, save $1,000, okay?
Yep.
We know why. Most people don't have that. The second thing, start to pay off your credit card debt,
Yeah.
all of your debts. Then move into 3 to 6 months of savings. It's going to be hard to save that 3 to 6 months of reserve funds if you have a lot of credit card debt. Okay, so number one, get the $1,000. Number two, start to pay down your credit cards. Now, there's multiple different ways to do that. Some people say I start with the highest interest rate because that's the one hitting me with the most, interest every month. I've looked at a lot of different methods. There's no one that's perfect, but here's the one that I think works the best for most people. Is what people call a snowball. You take the credit card with the lowest balance, don't care about the interest rate, and you pay that off as fast as possible. And let's say your payment on that is $150 a month. Once that's paid off, you take that $150 a month and you add it to the next credit card that has the next lowest balance. And let's say normally you're paying, $200 on that. Now you're paying $200 plus the $150 you got. Now you're paying $350 on that, and you just keep creating this snowball.
So don't let that $150 become your party expenses.
It's not extra money.
Right.
It's not cash yet. It's not fun for you yet. It's just still, you're just plunking away at this debt. And then once you have all the credit cards gone and you were paying $800 a month to pay off all your credit cards and you're living lean, guess what? That $800 still isn't yours yet. You got to start putting that $800 that was all going towards debt into savings and get that 3 to 6 months of savings going.
Love it.
After that, you can start to build wealth because you don't have an anchor that you're dragging behind in the form of debt and unforeseen expenses.
That's so good. Freedom.
Freedom. Peace.
Peace.
Yeah.
Creating platforms and ways and paths to get you there. Anything else on those goals?
With all of it, it's going to take time, and you're going to have to look a little weird to your friends. You're going to have to. You're going to have to say, I can't go out to eat with you guys. Oh, Joe, you never go out to eat anymore. I know. I don't.
Yeah.
Because I'm saving money. Like, my life isn't the most fun right now because I'm paying off a lot of credit card debt. But I'll tell you right now, 5 years from now, come talk to me.
Yeah.
And I will have the ability to go out to eat. I'll be saving money. I won't be worried about... I won't get any mail. It'll be junk mail. It won't be Citibank and American Express and Visa.
Sweating every time the phone rings and
Absolutely. So do the hard things that most people are not willing to do. That's why most of the population is living check to check and doesn't have $1,000. And by the way, these statistics cover people that make multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and I've seen these people personally. You make $300,000 a year and you can't cover $1,000 expense. It's not an income problem, people. It's a spending problem. So we need to start there. And if you have questions on that, just reach out to us. I know everybody's in a different situation, and everyone has hey, well, you don't know my situation. We all got them.
We all got
and we
them.
can work through it. So just got to get creative and get practical and get smart.
I love it. And so, guys, you have been listening to part 3 of creating mental and financial success. The first thing that you got to do as we keep going through this series on today's topic is create SMART goals. Get a plan in place. Use the SMART acronym: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. With whatever amount of money that you have, start with that, use that acronym, create you a game plan for mental and financial success. We appreciate you guys tuning in with us every single week. We got part 4 next week. You don't want to miss that. Really kind of building your financial legacy. Who are you leaving these things to? So, guys, we want you guys to have a great week. Joe, thank you so much for your time, my friend, and your expertise. Today's show is part 4, how to make your money work for you, creating a path of wealth and building that wealth and legacy. Joe, let's get into it, my friend. Let's go ahead and start. What would we say when we talk about building financial wealth or building to the next steps? What does wealth even mean?
Well, I would say, let's take a step back. We always talk about wealth in terms of money, but I think we need to talk about, what's true wealth. Sometimes we don't have the income, or the expenses are a little rough, or we're in debt, but we have already under our noses some true wealth. If you have good relationships, if you're in a place of peace and emotional well-being, if you have a strong faith, whatever those things are in your life, sometimes you already have that. Yeah. The money should just be a complement to that, to make your life not easier, but to allow you to do some more things in life.
I want to pause you right there. I think you just said something that's powerful. Because I think a lot of times people do attach success and happiness to the dollar amount that they make,
yes,
or to the financial piece of that.
Yes.
And you said something big. It should be a compliment.
Right. That
peace, that security, those connections, relationships, that's where it's at. Creating some mental peace and happiness around that.
Right.
That other piece.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We get people that come into the office and, in my industry, we talk a lot about goals and what's your retirement goals and what do you want to do with this money? And it's money, money, money. And if you focus on the money first, you're going to miss what you really should be planning for. It's kind of like if you were going to build a house and right away there's no house there, it's just land, and you walk out there with some tools, but you don't know what the plan is for the house. The first conversation on building the house is, what do we want the living room to look like? Do we want windows facing here? Do we want sunlight coming in? Is this a house to entertain? Do our kids going to grow up here? Are we going to have grandkids here? The vision. So when we talk about true wealth, I think you got to have a vision for what your life looks like, and 95% of it has nothing to do with material items.
Yeah.
It has everything to do with your family, your relationships, your faith. What is it that you're called to do in your life? Then you come around the back end and say, okay, how can I put my money in a place to start pushing me forward in these things? And I've gotten to a point in my life where I've had to, opportunities come and go. And you get to a point where you start to say no a lot more, because I say, look, I know where I'm going. And if this thing comes into my life and it doesn't help thrust me in that direction, or it pulls me off track, I got to say no to it. Because I know in my mind, or in my heart, and I've defined true wealth for myself. So I think every person has to do that, and put that emotional, subjective aspect to it before you start talking about the money part of it.
I love that. And I think, as you just described, that we got to have a vision first, because if you're just stepping out there with a bag of tools but not even sure what you're trying to build, you will find yourself scrounging around aimlessly, and protecting your time, your space, understanding, why am I here? What is my purpose? What do I want to do with this in every aspect of your life?
Right.
So if you're trying to build wealth in whatever area, having to have a starting place first.
Yes.
Starting place first.
Yeah.
So how do people start? So let's say if we have people that have been in a position now where they are starting with, $100 that they've already kind of saved up. If you guys have been following along each week and you're really kind of getting your mindset around, you know what? I'm going to change some of my thought patterns and beliefs around the things that I want, the things that I need. I'm doing that. I've also kind of taken a look at what are some of my behavioral patterns that I've had. Maybe I had family members who didn't believe that we could get past a certain point, or the limitations that were set on you. You've started to work on that. And then you've also started to now create some goals and setting up budgets in areas in your life that you feel like you can kind of get ahead in.
Yep.
Let's say that people are there. So starting there, now that we have maybe $100, how do we even know where to begin if we want to start to build or invest or make a contribution? Where do we start?
Yeah, so I'm going to back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the things people need to understand is that there's a difference between income and investments. All right? The number one asset, I don't care who you talk to, you can talk to anybody and they say, hey, I got this hot investment or this stock or put money in this company, blah, blah, blah. The best place you could put money is yourself. Hands down, guaranteed. You're never going to get a better return on investment than when you invest in yourself. Is that education? Is that training? Is that, going out and getting real world experience?
Yes.
Your ability to earn a paycheck or your ability to create a business is going to be your number one wealth building asset, hands down.
Love it.
The extra on when you've budgeted, you've saved, you've got your $1,000 emergency account, your debts are gone. You got your 3 to 6 months living expenses. The extra, that's kind of where your question's coming in, is where does that extra start to go? Well, there's a couple things. Number one, I would say, if you have a 401k at work, which a lot of people do, they have an employer-sponsored plan at work, make sure you know if your employer matches your contribution. Many employers do. Matching a lot less than it used to be years ago, but it's still there in a lot of companies, so an employer might match up to 3% or what you have you. Your goal should be to contribute up to that match. Now I say don't contribute anything over that match. Get the quote-unquote free money. Nothing's free, but that's as close to free as you can get. If your employer is going to match dollar for dollar at a certain point or 50 cents on the dollar up to a certain point, take that money from your employer. Do it.
Yeah.
It's guaranteed money. Beyond that, I would say if you don't know what a Roth IRA is, spend a little time, because of the length of these shows, we can't go into so much detail, but look at a Roth IRA, and you could call me and I could walk you through what they are for sure. But a Roth IRA allows you to put money in today. Now, you've already paid taxes on this money, so this is after you have deposited your paycheck. You paid taxes on it. You take some of that money and you put it in a Roth IRA, and when you retire at a later season of life, you get to pull that money out tax-free. Now, the whole time it's growing, compound interest, you're getting interest on the interest, and then when you take it out, you're not paying taxes. Now, when I talk about planning for people, a lot of us overlook taxes. I say, well, I'm asking somebody, how much do you make a year? Oh, I make, $87,000 a year. Okay, that's what you gross. How much do you keep? Your taxes. If we can remove the risk of taxes in the future, why wouldn't we do it? So when you say I have that extra $100, that extra $100 should be after you've funded your 401k to the match. You have that extra $100 sitting there. Start to look into things like a Roth IRA where you can be putting money, investing in your future tax-free.
That's good
It's
stuff.
a good place to start.
That's good stuff. And I think, like you just said, too, I think if you guys are listening and you have additional questions, because what we are doing is really just kind of a blanket of snapshots of information of where to go, where to begin. But to dig deeper into this, we will definitely provide some contact information after this show so we can kind of go into more detail and you can really kind of get into people one-on-one. So we were just getting into ways to make investments, the difference between income and investments. Glad you broke that down. And I'm also glad that you said you have to begin to invest in yourself first.
Yes.
You got to invest in yourself first. When we think about where our money is going, is our money going into things that really are, after you buy it, it's going downhill from there?
That's right.
Are we investing in ourselves, our education,
That's
our
right.
brain, our physical health, our mental health, things that we have to have in order to kind of do anything?
Right.
We got to have that.
It's funny, people will not hesitate. I think the average car payment now is $500 a month or somewhere around there. People will not hesitate to drop $500, $600 a month on something that will guarantee lose money. But they won't drop it on themselves.
Yeah.
They won't spend I can't go get that degree or that certification. It's like, $6,000. Well, your car was $36,000,
Right.
$46,000. What are we talking about?
Right.
Get your mind shifted that if you want that car, you can get that car.
Yeah.
but get yourself the income to get that car before you get that car.
Yeah.
It's going to feel a lot better.
Absolutely.
You're not going to sweat the payment, and you might not, if you do it really right, you won't have a payment. Why not do that? I'll tell you why people don't do it. Delayed gratification, sacrifice. It stinks.
Yeah.
It does. I want it now, man. I mean, my friend's got one. I want one. It looks sweet. I'm driving this. He's got that. What?
Yeah.
But you know what? You're going to have to, I'm getting off topic, but you're going to have to look weird. I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to go to happy hour every Friday anymore.
Yeah.
You're not going to go out to lunch with your friends, your coworkers 4 days a week. Just add that up.
Yeah.
I don't know where people are going to lunch every day. I can't buy lunch for like under $8. I don't know. And that's like a terrible lunch. It gives me a stomach ache. What are people doing? That's, that stuff adds up. So, someone just said before we actually walked in the studio here, it said, I don't have an income problem. I got a spending problem.
Yeah.
And boy, I think that's everybody. So get that stuff taken care of. Start to invest in yourself to create income. That's number one. That provides your lifestyle. The investments are for the future. So another tip that I'll throw out is just general advice. Keep it really simple. If you don't understand what you're investing in, don't do it yet.
Yeah.
Don't chase something that's complicated. Don't think you're finding some, new, flavor of the month that's going to make you, really make it work for you. Keep it really, really simple. Get in the habit of putting money away. Put your money in your 401k. If you don't have a 401k, put it in a Roth IRA anyway. If you don't know what that is, call me. I'll walk you through it. If you don't want to do that, put it in a bank account. If you don't want to do that, put it under the mattress. Put it somewhere besides into debt or into liabilities, things that don't make you any money. You just have to start.
You just have to start. And I think that's the message. You got to start somewhere, because we all have something, whether we know it or not. We have more than what we think we have if we're not seeing it. But if we're starting to pay attention to some of the things that we've been outlining through these series, is you're starting to pay attention to what our thoughts are, what our behaviors are, what our practices are. But if we have a vision and a plan, we're going to be able to kind of start to see where are things going and where can I begin to make the most impact?
Yes.
Right? Where can I start to make cuts, whether it is kind of reducing where I'm going out to eat that week and starting to cook in? Are you starting to see? So start small, start simple.
Start small.
A lot of times if we're looking at that whole picture, like I love how you use the analogy about building the house. If you're stepping out there and I got this entire house to build, I got to have $10,000 to pay off or to save.
Right.
That's a big task, and that becomes very overwhelming.
Yes.
So a lot of times what the brain does with that information, because it's overload, it immediately shuts down. Think about that in any goal that you try to set for yourself, whether it's a weight loss goal, whether it's a saving goal, whether it's a business goal. When you start to think about it from the entire picture, you get overwhelmed, you get stressed out, you put it down and you walk away. You never come back.
Absolutely.
So what we want to encourage you guys to do is take this in small steps, like we've provided it in small chunks. It's bit by bit, step by step. You're eating away at something, and then you're going to eventually see that all of these little steps, all of these little changes to your thoughts, all of these little changes to your behaviors, all of these little adjustments to the goals that you're setting are making a long-term dent in the things that you're trying to accomplish.
Big time. You said it. And I have big goals, Tracy. I know you got to have some big goals. I mean, but if you don't break those down into smart, seasonable, short-term, actionable goals, you will get overwhelmed, and they'll just stay dreams.
Yes.
Everyone can have a dream, but it doesn't turn into anything close to reality unless you attach realistic targets or benchmarks to it, where I got to hit this by next month, I got to hit this in 6 months, I got to hit this in 3 years, and you start to do that. One other thing too, as we're talking here, we're talking a lot about money, because that's kind of the concept of the show. Money it's a selfish thing, right? Because I don't know what you have, you don't know what I have, but I want more, you want more, and we all want it for ourselves. Don't miss this. Don't wait to get rich to start being generous. Start being generous right now with what you have. Now look, if you can't keep the lights on and you lost your job and your kids aren't that's a different story, right? You got to do what you got to do to survive. But if you have, when you say you got that $100 extra, treat that coworker that's struggling. Just buy them lunch or do something for somebody kind. You don't have to be a philanthropist
Yeah.
and start a big organization, but start to be generous. And I'll tell you what that does. You sow seeds of generosity. What you reap, you sow. It starts coming back to you. And the other thing it does is when we're constantly buying things for ourselves, we're creating this mental prison that we're in of just money controls me. It's my food. It's what I need. It's all about me. When you start to just release some of it,
It's powerful.
any of it, I don't care how much it is, just release it to somebody, somewhere, you start to feel less attached and less stressed by it. It's almost immediate. So I would encourage people, I can't wait till I have $1 million and I'm going to blah, blah, blah. Well, you got $100 right now.
Yeah.
Take 5 or 10
Yeah.
and go bless somebody.
love
Drop
it.
in a little bit extra on the waitress at lunch today. You only needed $5, but give her 10
Yeah.
and watch her smile about it, like little things like that. I know it's not really a practical thing, but I believe that's more practical than hoarding more for myself.
And you
I
know
think you
what?
get more out of it.
Absolutely. And that really is the key to accessing more. When you have an
Yeah.
abundance mentality where there's no lack, that starts in the mind
Yep.
first. And so that's exactly where we started this series. And so once you begin to open yourself up in that way, you can give of your time,
Yes.
you can give of your resources, you can give of your heart, you
Yep.
can give of your attention. Those are all ways that we can open ourselves up to just say, you know what, how can I give
Yeah.
or be of service today?
Yeah.
You start with that mindset. So I love how you said that. You start there and watch how things just flow to you. The more open that you are to receive and to give, it just comes back.
It does.
It comes back over and
does.
over and over again. So that's a great message. I think that's one of the most powerful things you can begin to do. These practical solutions you can do all day long, but choosing to walk in a space and a place of openness and genuineness and generosity
Yeah.
is huge.
And that's the legacy piece, right?
Yeah.
Who's watching you?
Yeah.
You have kids. Your kids are watching how you behave with money. I watched my parents. Did I inherit some good behaviors? Yeah, but did I inherit some things I probably wish I didn't because I watched them and lived under that? Yeah, and they know that.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the same thing with my kids.
Yeah.
When your kid says, "Oh, Daddy, I want this," and I'm like, we can't afford it. I just put that out and over my whole family that we can't afford it instead of saying, you know what? All right, well, Daddy's got to go do some extra work and we're going to find a way to get it. It's change your mind about money. Find what it is you're trying to accomplish, and then set your SMART goals and go make a path to try to go do it.
Love it, love it, love it. There's nothing that you can't have. There's nothing that you can't do. You might not see the way right now, but saying,
Right.
let's find a path to get there,
Right.
creating that setup. Guys, what we want to do is just do a quick recap that if you have been listening to any of this information and you feel like this last part 4 or the series in general has been something that's been beneficial for you, we want to make sure that you know that this is a starting place. We are both professionals in our own field. And so if you need more information, we encourage you to seek professional support. If you've been just tipping the iceberg and you feel like this is a place and a path that I want to dive a little further into, reach out to us. You can contact me anytime at tracyalston.com. Joe, I would love for you to give your information. So if people want to dive a little deeper in some of the great information that you've provided, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way really is probably my email would be the best way. I check that all the time. It's Joe D at parksidewealth.com. And just shoot me an email with questions that you have. Make sure you're specific, and I'll get back to you same day.
Yeah, and we
That's
really
the
are
best
looking
way.
to, if you have questions, just know there's no charge to really kind of send us a message to figure out how we can get to a starting plan on where to go from here. This has been a fun series, my friend. We have a few minutes left. Let's just do a brief recap. Guys, you can always go back to tracyalston.com, seeing the first show there that was on mindset, really our thought patterns and beliefs. So understanding the very first thing you got to do is get this mind in the right condition. Okay, we can't do anything else if your mindset is closed off. If you have a fixed mindset around where you are, you will stay there. Okay, so the very first thing we are encouraging you to do, open up that mind for growth. Open up that mind for change. Open up that mind for abundance in any area of your life. So starting there.
Yes.
Number 2 was behavioral and mental patterns behind the mental piece and the financial piece. Okay. So what are some of those behaviors? What are those things that we're doing? Are we doing impulse spending? Are we happy and we're spending more money, sad and spending more money? So starting to take a look at your behaviors, beginning to understand where are the patterns coming from? Is it something that you saw your family do? So understanding that. Number 3, we did SMART goals last week. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic.
Realistic and relatable.
Yeah, and relatable, and time-based.
Time-bound.
So setting up your plan for SMART goals, and today you're learning how to figure out what's next. Once you have what you have, what do you do with it next?
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, buddy?
No, just start.
Just start.
If you didn't start with show number 1, that's where you need to start, because you can't do anything until your mind's around doing this stuff. It's just not going to happen.
That's
so start with show number 1 and then go from there. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Hope you guys enjoyed it. And as always, to my Mental Fitness Matters community, I appreciate you. We appreciate you. I want you to continue to shine bright like the stars that you are. We will see you next week. Have a great week.